Hey y'all, it's Grant Fletcher, and we are back with another episode of the 69-minute Eargasm with the quintessential stud muffin, Joel Gertner. Joel, you recently took a trip further northeast than where you are currently.
Yes, sir. I went into one of my second homes here in the United States, New England, the New England region. I lived in Connecticut for a bit and promoted there as well. Promoted in Connecticut, a few different spots. Promoted in Albany with MXW. And yeah, man, ECW, did a lot of shows in Massachusetts, New Hampshire with ECW, did even a little bit of the Massachusetts indie scene, worked for Sheldon Goldberg and ECW, and got inducted into the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame and was at the Fan Fest the next afternoon. And that was a couple of weeks ago, and just a ton of fun, man. Just really, I got surprised. My wife surprised me by inviting a lot of my friends from out of state. I had no idea. And then, one by one, I would see them kind of pop up, and it was just an amazing time. Really a career highlight and a life highlight too.
Man, that's awesome. And that's, an honor well deserved. I mean, especially for like you, someone who's worked in the business as long as you have. And done the things you've done. I mean, yeah, man, you should be there. It was great. And on top of that too, like you said, Connecticut, there's some other guy kind of big in the pro wrestling world in Connecticut. His name escapes me right now, but he was like a promoter and a wrestler and a color commentator. It'll come to me at some point in time, but another Connecticut name.
Yeah. Promoting Connecticut was interesting. The Connecticut, MXW, when we were there, we did some cool things. We did some great things. For my liking, the numbers are never where they need to be. I'm a numbers driven person.
Sure.
My own worst critic, and I'm a perfectionist and everything that goes along with being a Virgo, I guess, or just being me. And, I'm never, like Prince said in the song, I'm never satisfied. But so to me, I thought that our product was the best show that nobody saw, that nobody was watching. And, it was really great. It was some cool stuff. Some of it was experimental. A lot of talent from the area used our shows to get going and get developed. And man, I can watch NXT now, and depending on what's on, like, a given talent, a given segment, a given kind of just vibe or production style or element or whatever, I'll see it and I'll be like, wow, if I had the money, this is exactly what we had going, and this is what I was going for, and everything like that. But it just, I don't know, random just compliments here and there. The fans would come up to me when we were really kind of in our peak and in our prime, and we'd really gotten going, and they knew what to expect for their, at the time it was, I think, maybe $20 front row and $15 GA. And it was a labor of love, and we never turned a profit, and everything was overbooked, and the shows were just quality and quantity, just unbelievable. And one guy came up to me and he was like, "You're the PWG of the East." And like, it was just it was lightning in a bottle. It was fun, and it didn't live up to its full potential, and it didn't get to a level that I would have hoped. It's still there. I mean, MXW still exists on paper. It's a sole proprietorship that I own. And we did a show in New Haven, Connecticut at a legendary rock club called Toad's Place. We did that in 2010. And I thought about running a show and almost ran one 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago here in Brooklyn. So who knows, maybe one day, whatever's clever, and if it seems right, maybe I'll get a wild bug up my ass and MXW will make a return. You never know what could happen after 6 or 7 years. As we record this, I'm running a 5K race tomorrow night.
I was going to say, you're running it right now as we record it.
And it's in a series of 5Ks that I most recently ran, I think 7 years ago, like August of 2016. When I was 7 years younger and about 10 or 12 pounds, I think, lighter, I ran it. So I'll do that tomorrow. But yeah, you never know. Nice. Maybe W will come back. And who knows if promoting is one of the reasons for my induction, or whether I was inducted purely as talent, or whether I was inducted just because out of the kindness of Joe Bruin's heart. I have no idea, but I'm just thankful, and I felt so blessed a couple weeks ago. Really, really, just an awesome moment.
Well, that's awesome, man. It's an awesome story, and the whole MXW thing. We've never really touched on that on the show. You and I have talked about it a little bit, over the phone, but we never talked about it on the show. I think honestly, we should devote a little bit of time, maybe devote an episode to, the whole run of MXW up to this point. And we'll talk about the history of that promotion, as it were, because we do have some, we'll say, some extra episodes we're going to be dropping soon under a different format than what we normally do. And I mean, it should be said that the current format is not going away, but years ago, Joel and I had a concept for a show that we were going to do that never came to fruition. And more recently, we said, you know what, why don't we just bring that over to the Eargasm? Why don't we give the Eargasm Army just a little bit more content, right? Why don't we talk more about things that have happened in years past that we really loved?
Yeah. And that's the plan, is to do exactly that, and to, like you say, kind of just shake it up and alter the presentation, and bring in, some additional content, and kind of stir it up where it's not, kind of Larry King, kind of one-on-one, kind of Q&A, kind of interview. And instead, take on, and not just take on, individuals as guests, but take on topics, and go into detail, man, and tell everybody what you got in mind.
Well, yeah, I mean, years ago, Joel and I had this, there was a concept, Joel came up with the concept. It wasn't my concept, for a show called Extreme Championship Wednesday, in which we would just examine, things that happened back in ECW, pay-per-views and runs of certain wrestlers and things like that. And over the course of a couple of years, just trying to think of ideas, we put a few episodes in the can. So we've got some recorded. So I'll do, we'll talk about it a little bit. I'll set the stage. But next week on this show here, make sure you hit subscribe now, whether you're on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app or whatever, because next week we are going to be releasing one of those episodes we have in the can, and it is all about Heatwave 1998. Probably the best ECW pay-per-view of all time. We're going to be talking about the lead up. We're going to be talking about what happened. And it's a fun time, man. I can't wait to share that with everybody. I can't wait to get the ball rolling. And then as we go forward, we're going to be talking about more, topics, ECW centric, and maybe some things not ECW centric as well. Just things, that Joel can provide his perspective to as someone that is a veteran of the business, someone that was a wrestler, someone that was a color commentator, someone that was a manager, someone that was a promoter, So it's going to be a really fun time. I'm really looking forward to it.
I want to see if the Heatwave 98 pilot, which is celebrating its 25th anniversary this summer, I want to see if that moves the needle, because I have some ideas of a thing or two that could be done depending on interest level and logistics. And, I'll kind of leave it at that. But it is the 25th anniversary of Heatwave 98. And this is a pilot that we recorded a year or two ago, a bit ago, before it was. We didn't record it for being the silver anniversary of Heatwave 98, but it just happened to be that now we're putting it out at that time. And yeah, I mean, let's put it out there. And the fires have always burned bright for ECW, and there's never a need even to stoke those fires, because people just constantly, it's the appetite for ECW and everything that was presented under that banner from 92 to 01, the original ECW. The appetite for it has yet to go away, may never go away. And that makes sense to me. Why should it? Because for me, for example, like if you want to talk to me about World Class, or if you want to talk to me about Mid-South, or if you want to talk to me about Memphis, I'm down. I'm ready. Let's go. I'll watch. I'll talk about it. We'll analyze it. We'll debate it. I'm down. And that's, where a lot of people stand with ECW, because at one time and in one spot, and especially for a certain generation of fan, ECW was the last territory. We were, it was such a crossover. It was such a melange. It was such a hybrid, because at the same time, we are being looked at concurrently as one of the 3 national wrestling promotions, global wrestling promotions, in a 3-way war as the Snapple to WWF and WCW's Coke and Pepsi. And then at the same time, other people are thinking about us as the last territory. And it's just, it's just an amazing spot to be in. And I'm glad we get to, keep it in people's fond memories and give people, some ECW to dwell on, ruminate about, consider, and just some real kind of deep divey kind of analytical talk. And so yeah, let's see how we have. It's almost like All in the Family, where there was like the 1968 pilot and 69 and 70, something like that, until they finally got picked up. And it's like the same episode over. It's the same script all 3 years, a year apart each, with the exception of the actors change, the sets change, but the script is exactly the same. And I think you and I did either 2 or 3 pilots for Extreme Championship Wednesday. Up until now, none of them have aired. And this is going to be the first one of the bunch. And I'm super excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Yeah, we've got 3 episodes we're going to be putting out, and then, like we said, we'll be moving forward. So, and what's funny is you mentioned, whatever surprise or whatever idea you have there. I don't even know what Joel's talking about right now. It's a surprise to me. So, once that episode drops, y'all, leave us your comments on Instagram or leave us your comments on YouTube and let us know what you think of the episode. So, we can see what it is that Joel might have up his the sleeve of his fur coat.
I still talk to a lot of members of the ECW roster, and I still live 99 miles away from 2300 Arena, and I still want to make sure that fans are able to experience, whether it's old or new, an ECW extreme wrestling experience. And, without saying any more, let's see how the episodes go.
Yeah, let's see how they go. Let's see how this episode goes first. I mean, okay, before we talk about it, Joel, I've got a really important question to ask you.
Shoot.
Are you down with the clown?
Everybody come to the greatest show. Yeah, man, I've been down with the clown. You're going to hear it in the interview, man. I don't want, I hate reiterating stuff too often, too frequently, because then it sounds like, it's a lot less genuine than it really is. But since you asked, yeah, man, I've been down with the clown professionally and personally since, I want to say 97, man, when they had no reason really, aside from maybe, they were watching ECW and, if I'm blessed enough, then maybe they got the cut of my jib and they kind of enjoyed what they saw out of me. But I remembered my friend Sebastian, who he's my best man at my wedding, and he's one of my best friends, and I was staying with him in the Philly area while I was in ECW at one point, and I was there when the care package was sent to his place. And I forget if he kind of had a contact for them and urged me to reach out to them. But like in 97, when kind of ECW was getting big and they were getting big, it got expressed that there was kind of a mutual admiration society, at least for sure on my end, towards them. And they got my address, I forget how, and they sent me a big cardboard box full of like great Milenko, like CDs and T-shirts and stickers and the whole 9 yards. And again, I didn't feel entitled to it, and I felt lucky to get it. And ever since then, I've just been, a fan of them, again, personally and professionally, more than anything else. And we've gone on to work together in ECW on the same shows, and they've had me at the Gathering. And yeah, man, and I've kind of given away maybe who it could be.
They already know.
All you really asked me is if I was down with the clown.
They already know.
And I ran into the end zone with it. But as you can see, yeah, man, heavy duty, hardcore, all day, every day, down with the clown.
That's awesome, man. And yeah, they seem like such awesome guys and genius marketers at the very least. Say what you will, but genius marketers. And man, they know their fans. They love their fans. It's amazing just to see the level at which their fans are engaged with them. So it's really cool. It's really cool that we even got one of them just to sit down and talk with us here on this episode, talk to you rather on the, it wasn't talking to me, it was talking to you on this episode. But yeah, man, it's really cool. And it's really hard for me to pick favorites as far as the episodes go, because I work on all of them. I put a lot of effort into all these episodes. So, but there's plenty of them where I can say, well, that was one that, was unexpected or something like that. But as far as like the fun factor goes, this one is near the top of the list, if not at the tippy top of the list, as far as the fun factor goes.
It was great. It really was a great time. And they all, like you said, and I concur. And whenever I'm talking with somebody for an hour or so, however long it is each episode, it always flies by. And by the time it's over, you can't believe it's over. And the whole thing really does feel like 10, 15 minutes. But yeah, this one was special in a way. This one had a special kind of vibe because, I mean, in 97, one of the first ECW pay-per-views in Florida that they were in for, Hardcore Heaven, it's like 26 years ago now. And like, we were all in our like early 20s, like early to mid 20s. And it's over a generation ago. And we had all, up until that point in our lives, for being as old as we were at the time, we were doing well. We'd already seen some success. But to think that it's been more than a quarter century since then, and just to be able to pick up the ball and just kind of get into the yard and shoot hoops, it's amazing. It's like no time has gone by. It hit me after the interview, just how it's been like 26 years since we all met. And it's just time is, it's kind of that feeling you get, like, especially post COVID, right? Where like time is like, it can, depending, it can drag on, or it can seem like the blink of an eye, and good time goes fast. And in this interview, like I say, I mean, the whole thing, I couldn't believe we talked for an hour, excepting for how much we got in, how much we covered.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, in that respect, like, it was such a full, thorough interview that, of course, in that way, it felt, I guess, like an hour. But without that, like, it just really did feel like two blinks of the eye and it was over. And I guess that's, like they say, because good time goes fast. But on a grander scale, like macrocosm, like 26 years, so much has happened for ICP and for me. But I mean, it really just feels like the blink of an eye. It feels like no time at all.
It's amazing, man. I can't wait for everybody to hear this interview. It's a lot of fun. Like we said before, everybody out there, look, make sure you're following us on all your socials, your Instagram, Threads, etc. Wherever you are, hit the subscribe button. That be on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, whatever it may be. And be sure to leave us a comment and a 5-star review, y'all. I am Grant Fletcher. He is Joel Gertner, and this is Violent J.
My life like a movie, just keep moving, it's a trailer. Shipping in my kitchen, got me trying to get my cake up.
Well, y'all already know what time it is. You know we could keep it down with the clown. You know it's a gathering every time we have an eargasm. And this time it is even more of a gathering than it normally is, because the intro. Ladies and gentlemen, prepare to knock your fat craniums to this brand fabulous new ICP. Woo! ICP, woo! And the Stud Muffin presents, right out of, where, Clown Town. He is the Duke of doing it. He is the Clown King. He is the governor of the gathering from ICP Insane Clown Posse. You are talking about, and I am speaking with, the one and the only Violent J. Violent J, what's going on, my friend?
2 whoops and a bowl of Fruit Loops, my friend. I'm happy to be here.
Man, I've never, you know what? I've still never seen anything like The Gathering, and I've been there. I've been to The Gathering, and I've never seen anything like The Gathering, because nothing else that's like The Gathering is The Gathering itself. We're going to talk about it. We're going to get there. It was a big retirement match. It was a big loser leaves town. It was a big loser hanging up. We're going to talk about it. I was privileged to be there.
let's start at the very beginning, if it's okay, because this is every guest that we have on the Eargasm. We start the same way because whether they're quote unquote from wrestling, whether wrestling is just one of their many talents, whether they're whatever it is, they're on the Eargasm, not necessarily because wrestling was their one and only, but because in their mind, in their heart, in their soul, wrestling was something that they've gravitated to from the beginning for a long, long time. So what I want to ask, before we get into any music, before we get into just wrestling related, what is the first wrestling that you remember watching where you kept on watching? How did you get into it? Geographically, where were you? Chronologically, how old were you? And then, if you remember, what is the first live wrestling event that you ever went to?
I remember as a kid, I remember flipping through wrestling and being scared of it because usually it was one guy getting his ass beat really hard, you know what I'm saying, by the other guy. And as a little kid, I remember me and my brother not wanting to watch it. But when I got older, I remember my friend telling me about WrestleMania 1. Right before WrestleMania 1 happened is when I really caught the bug. And I remember seeing on TV a jobber in the WWF called Mr. X. And I remember being freaked out that he had a mask on, you know what I mean? And just all of that for the first time as a little kid, you know. And one of he had this black mask on. His name was Mr. X. And just learning about the way pro wrestling was, you know.
Oh, it was almost like tic-tac-toe, because when I was watching Vince at first in the early to mid-'80s, there was a Mr. X and there was a Barry O, right? There was Barry Orton. Right? Cowboy Bob Orton's brother. So there was a Mr. X, there was a Barry O. Now here comes Johnny K9. But yeah, I get it.
All those guys, and seeing the whole way it was ran and everything. And I remember seeing Mike Rotundo and Barry Windham with the tag belts. And I remember seeing the Missing Link wrestling for WWE on late night TV.
Bro, Missing Link, Kamala, George Steele, that's my wheelhouse, bro.
Yeah, me too. Missing Link was one of my... Oh my God, the green makeup and everything was so dope. And I remember it was a jobber match. It was him versus a jobber, yet he was bleeding, you know what I mean? He went out of the ring, he was banging a chair against his head. And I remember as a kid seeing that on late night TV, being like, man, it blew me away in the first, but by the time I got my stepdad to take me down to a wrestling match, I remember the main event was Hulk Hogan versus Adrian Adonis. And what a great fucking match for your first time going down there. You know what I mean? It was just a typical good guy beating Adrian around. And then I remember also on the card was Corporal Kirshner versus Nikolai Volkov in a boot camp match. and there was and also Andre the Giant and Junkyard Dog were teaming up. And they were going against Bondi, Stud, and Heenan. And it was a handicap match, 2 versus 3. And what a great card. What a great introduction to live wrestling, you know, for the first time in my life. But after I went down there for that, I went to everything. I went to all the independent shows. We didn't get NWA back then or WCW, but they eventually came around, and I was at everything, man. And we started a backyard wrestling promotion. We didn't want to wait till we grew up. We wanted to wrestle now, so we took 4 big railroad posts and we pounded them into the ground with sledgehammers. And we took garden hose. We went garbage picking and got a bunch of garden hose and wrapped it really tight around the post, and then wrapped tape around that, and put old carpet down. And we had a ring, and we'd put flyers out in the neighborhood for our events. Tell everybody to come Saturday night at 7 or whatever. You know what I mean? And we do these little shows, and it was awesome, man. And once I turned 17, 18, I started going to see Al Costello of the Fabulous Kangaroos, who worked as a security guard downtown. And he used to be a wrestling tag team from Detroit here. And he started showing us a couple things. And next thing you know, there was an independent wrestling show. I believe this is when I was 17. There was an independent wrestling show here in Detroit, and I was there helping set up chairs. And I lied and told them I went to Chris Adams School of Wrestling in Texas. and somebody didn't show, so they put me on the show, and that's when I had my very first match, you know. So I became an independent wrestler. and wrestle around the Midwest. And Shaggy, my partner, he would come and manage me, you know what I mean? And so I did that for a while. This is all before rapping and everything, you know?
Once you
that's how I got...
Yeah, but no, so I'm fascinated because what comes to mind is, so once you guys start rapping, once you and Shaggy are like laying it down and putting it on wax, and you guys are becoming big on the scene as ICP, or if there was something that predated ICP. But once you guys start doing that, does wrestling kind of move to being side shizzle, side hustle, back burner for a while? Or like, tell me about the transition to going from being an independent wrestler with Shaggy as your manager to now, you know, ICP becoming a huge deal, big worldwide, and how were you able to balance it with wrestling and govern yourselves accordingly?
Well, you know, from the time I was probably 12 till I was 17, or about 17 or 18, we didn't want to be wrestlers. We were positive we were going to be wrestlers. It wasn't even a question. It was a fact. Like, there wasn't even any hope or want to it. We knew we were going to be pro wrestlers for a living. But when I turned 17, I started getting really into hip hop, you know, really, really into rap. And when I get into something, you know, I want to do it. You know what I mean? Especially when I was young. So I started doing them both. You know, I was riding around, wrestling, driving around, taking bookings, and I was also rapping. We were both rapping, me and Shaggy, you know, and hip hop just overtook our love for wrestling. You know, this is where it's crazy. By the time I was 19, and I believe Shaggy was 17, we decided we were going to do hip hop. We changed our entire thing. We decided we're going to be rappers for a living. You know what I mean? It wasn't an easy decision. It just that hip hop just kind of overtook the love at that time. And in doing the independent shows, you know, we were getting made fun of in the dressing room. It was honestly a different time in wrestling. All the guys in the dressing room were old, fat guys. You know what I mean? There was not young people in the dressing room like that. It was a harder business to get into back then. It was one of those you had to know somebody type thing to even know how to get trained or anything. It was just a different world. And I remember the first shows that we were doing, it was all older guys, old guys, you know, like in their 40s with big beer guts, you know. And me and Rob Van Dam and sometimes Sabu were the only younger people on that show. You know what I mean? And the other guys were all old time guys that never really went anywhere, you know? But it was hard to get into. So it just turned us off on the way it worked and not getting paid and driving all the way to Milwaukee for $50 and all that stuff. But it wasn't like that in hip hop. We were getting more success in hip hop, more girls, more, you know, money, everything. And so it overtook our love. But what's crazy is even when we got going in hip hop and we left wrestling, so to speak, when we were 26, when I was 26, he was 24, and we had our first gold record, the WWE contacted us, which is insane, but it's true. They contacted us and asked us to make the ring music. Jim Johnson asked us to make the ring music for the Oddities tag team, and they had no idea that we used to wrestle or nothing. You know what I mean? And so that's why I believe in The Secret or the laws of attraction or the powers of positive thinking. Because from the time I was 12 till I was like 17 or 18, I knew I was going to be a wrestler. I put all that energy, that positive energy into that thought. We knew we were going to end up wrestling, you know, in the big time. But even when we changed our dream later in life, that first dream came back and presented itself to us. You know what I mean? And next thing you know, we went to WWE, you know, doing SummerSlam at Madison Square Garden, and it was insanity because we stopped pursuing that dream for the most part, and it came back to us anyway because we already put the 5 or so years of positive thinking into it. You know what I mean?
Crazy, right? Like you got in through the side entrance, you got in through the back door. You know what I mean? Like instead of taking the stairs on the indies, like you took the escalator in the music scene, and then you were able to take the people mover at the airport right over sideways into wrestling.
Yeah, and it wasn't our talent or anything like that in wrestling that got us into wrestling, you know. But the dues were paid nonetheless. You get what I'm saying? Like they were paid either way, whether it was music or wrestling.
That's the best part. And selfishly, I want to hear a little bit more about it, right? Because I don't know if you know, but Sabu wrote a book, and I'm going to be narrating the audio book. I've been tapped to narrate the audio book for Sabu's book, which I'm sure that you're in a time or two. So just selfishly, like, I want to hear a little bit more about that before we move on. So I know you say that it's like, oh, you're going out to Milwaukee for like $50, and that's how it is. Before we pick back up with WWE, obviously there's nothing for, I was about to ask you, you guys obviously, I guess, like you say, the power of positive thinking, the laws of attraction, you guys did what was right, what felt right, whatever's clever, it's in the moment. That's what you guys did, and you guys obviously got to that high level of success at a young age and did everything in the order of priority that was best for you guys, and that's great. Tell me a little bit more about paying your dues, being ready to perform with WWE, with groups like, before we get to them specifically, ECW, WCW, but what was it that was ingrained in you before you made the larger commitment to music almost exclusively, or at least priority one? What else was it that you learned in Detroit on the scene with Sabu and RVD that made you know that you were ready to be on the worldwide global wrestling?
I think it's a gift, and that gift is drive. That gift is ambition. And I think it of course, can be still gifted into anybody. It doesn't matter what their trait is, what their dream is, or their goal is. You know, to have that drive and that ambition is the goal. Because for us, like I said, even as a kid, failure was never an option. You know, like there was never a time, we never had a plan B. There was no plan B. You know, we knew we were going to be wrestlers, and I can't stress that enough. I remember sitting there in middle school, talking to somebody and telling them about how they better get my autograph now because it's not going to be that easy to get it later, you know? And they were laughing at me, but I meant it. You know what I'm saying? I remember meaning what I was saying, you know? I was like, you're going to be bragging that you went to school with me one day, you know what I mean? And I remember meaning it. Like, I believe that, you know? And I think that's a major, because we didn't stop. Like, I wish I could say we had some break in the music industry or some when we popped, but it never worked like that. It was a long, slow crawl all the way to where we're at, you know. And whenever we had a meeting, no matter what we just did or what happened or anything, whenever we had a meeting, our meetings were always like, how come we're not doing this, or how come everybody else is, you know, able to, like, we were never happy. We were never satisfied, you know. No matter what happened, even after we had our first gold record, it didn't seem like we had a gold record, you know?
You sound like me mentally and probably physically more than I should have, pacing backstage at ECW Arena when I was 21, going on 22, beating myself up. How come I wasn't where I am right now when I was 19 or 20? That's how it is.
Right.
You know, but I can relate.
That's that drive, though, because where other people would be satisfied, once you're there, it's not the way you thought it would be. It's not as fulfilling or something, and you want more, you know. And I know, like, when we had our first sold-out show, it didn't seem like anything to us because it was just a small venue, you know. Where other people would have been like, cool, we sold this out, you know, and sat and celebrated for a while. We didn't care at all. We were like, this is nothing compared to where we want to be. So, I mean, it was a slow, very slow process, but the cool thing was we were always new to more and more people because there was never a hit record. We never had a record where everything exploded. Next thing you know, we were known. It was never like that. So every year we got to grow a little bit more, and we could tour a little more cities and draw better, and it just went slower and slow. I mean, it went slow and slow. But after so many years, you look back and you're like, damn, look how far we've came. You know what I mean? So it was just a lot of flyers. This is a time before the internet. There was a lot of flyers. It was what we called slap sticking, which is going through the city and slapping glue on the wall and then posters up on the buildings. And it was a lot of going to high schools at 3 o'clock when the schools let out and handing out the samplers, the cassette samplers to all the kids, and then the CD samplers later, and just grassroots promotion all the way. You know, once we started getting money, we just bought more vans and hired more people and made our street teams grow, you know, and took it from there. Instead of us doing it, now we had a team of 9 doing it, you know, and we just kept going and kept doing it like that. There was no hit single. There was no record deal that all of a sudden we were successful. There was nothing. We do it all independent, and we always have and always will. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, and it's admirable, bro. And it's always a delicate dance. It's always a balance between, you know, micromanaging and DIY versus delegation. And like you say, just, you know, turning a team of 2 into a team of 9 that isn't y'all. And like, it's just, you know, it's amazing. It just, everything always just snowballs, you know, and when you can see things start growing exponentially, you know, it's, that's it, you know, that's the American dream.
So many people wait for benefits. They wait for blessings. They wait for great things to happen, and they don't go and get it and pursue it. They just wait and think it's going to come. It might never come, but if you slowly keep walking,
you're absolutely right. Because so there was a time in my journey, however many years ago, right? Whether this is just, you know, depending on how you measure, this could have been me a year ago, and this could have been me more like 20 years ago. But there's been a time in my journey for however long where I, you know, not that I want to sit at the kid's table and not even that it's even speak when spoken to, but there was a time where I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to beg, ask, even like I didn't know that was okay, and I didn't, because I also never believed in like nepotism. I always thought your work, people know who people, if people are going to want to work with you, they know who you are, what you can do. If they're interested, they'll reach out. And I did a bit too much of that for too long along my journey, so I can absolutely understand what you're talking about. You know, you got to go out and get it.
You got to, man. You got to pursue it. You got to track them down. You got to send the tapes or whatever, you know. I mean, like, whatever whatever the way is of doing things at that time, you got to stay active and keep trying to excel, man, because no matter how good you are, sometimes that isn't enough. You know what I mean? Sometimes the really good ones remain low key, you know, because you also got to hustle and you got to have that burning desire. You know what I mean? I think, and that's the true gift to me. Because sometimes you can even have that desire and not a lot of talent, but your desire is so there. You know what I mean? That you're still making noise. You know, so if you can have them both, you're the total chance of success. You know what I mean?
For sure. So you're doing the music for the Oddities, right? Working alongside Jim Johnson, right? So you're doing the ring music. So they got you doing music, right? So
yeah, we do the ring music.
Yeah. So now let's talk about wrestling on the worldwide global scale. Now let's talk about, you know, in whichever order. Now we are going to specifically in order through your journey. We're going to talk about WWF, WWE. We're going to talk about CW. We're going to talk about WCW. So you're there with the Oddity doing the music. They have no idea. They want you for you, who they think you are. They don't know that you were a wrestler before you were in hip hop. So they want the music and they want ICP and they want you to wave your wand, but they don't know that you could also work, take bumps, whatever, and that you're wrestling people. So talk to me about how that gets on their radar, and talk to me about the first time you're working as wrestling talent on TV with a major company, not just as a musical artist, not just as somebody who's putting together some other act. Ring music.
Well, when they asked us to do the music for the Human Oddity, we you know, right away we were like, you guys know we wrestle, right? And they were like, what do you mean? And we were like, we wrestle. I used to be an independent wrestler, and we have a ring, because we bought a wrestling ring the minute we started making any kind of money. The first thing we bought was a ring and a cage and everything. And So we used to do private shows in our warehouse all the time. So we were in great ring shape, man, especially like 95 around then. We were in great ring shape, man. We used to go an hour every day just for lunch, just in the ring, just to go, you know. But so when they called us and asked us to do the ring music, we were like, you know, we wrestle? And they were like, no. So next thing you know, they put us on a plane and brought us out there to the headquarters in Connecticut. And we went into the ring with Tom Pritchard, I believe, and they had a video camera set up, and we wrestled on the tapes for Vince McMahon. And me and Shaggy wrestled each other. We wrestled Tom. We did all that, and made the tapes, you know. And then next thing you know, they had us come into the ring with the oddities at SummerSlam. Now, first we were just doing the music, you know what I mean? Like, we were going to just create the music, and that was it. But then next thing you know, they're like, well, you want to come to the ring with them and wrap them down to the ring? And we're like, fuck yeah, you know. So we started at SummerSlam, and that whole experience was just surreal, man. Like, meeting Vince McMahon, like, you know, there's not many people I've met that I'm intimidated by, but meeting Vince McMahon was like our whole mouth dried out. You know what I'm saying? Like, me and Shaggy both, like, just meeting him, and he came up and he asked us a question about a contest we were having on our website at the time. And I remember we were so shocked that he knew what that contest was we were doing. And we were just, you know, it was a really cool, like, experience, especially to debut at Madison Square Garden. You know what I mean? The main event that night was Stone Cold versus Undertaker, Highway to Hell, you know? And it was just such a massive thing to do. And so we went out there, we wrapped him to the ring. I believe we may have got involved in the extent of tripping somebody's foot that first night. But the very next night, we were ringside with him again, and we just started traveling with him. There was never a plan or anything. It was like, after, like, SummerSlam, we thought was a one-time thing. You know, we just coming in to do SummerSlam, and that was it, and wrap them to the ring, you know. But next thing you know, they're like, hey, are you guys available for Raw tomorrow? And we were like, yeah. You know, so we moved on, and I believe it was in Connecticut the next day, the Raw, and we did that. And next thing you know, back then it was set up to where they would film Monday and Tuesday, and then they would be off a week. See what I'm saying? They would go live Monday, and then they would film the next Monday's show, you know, so the next day on Tuesday. So they were off every other week, you know, of being a live show. But every other week we went and did Raw. You know, and man, it was crazy. I thought it was the coolest time of my life. Like, doing that was one of the most interesting, funnest things of my life. But I didn't really start having actual fun till we got to WCW. You know what I'm saying? That's where we actually had fun. There was just less pressure and less. It was just more chaotic in WCW. You know what I mean? Like, more that's chaotic. Where we really had fun, you know?
More chaotic, less structure, yeah. Or because I got to be honest, like, I never worked for WCW, right? But, or you know, I did a shot for WWE for the ECW reunion and whatever, you know, but full-time neither, just ECW. But then I worked for TNA, which had a lot of kind of the WCW production people, some WCW office people. Like, there was a strong influence, you know? And,
yeah, big time, yeah.
For me, obviously, compared to ECW, not that it's WCW. Again, it's not WCW, it's TNA. But to compare TNA to ECW, I would tell you that TNA seemed more structured. What is it that you believe for you made WCW seem more chaotic than WWE?
I don't know if chaotic would be the right word. It's just that, okay, for example, in WWE one time, we came to Lansing, Michigan, right, for a Raw. This is the very Raw, I believe, that Stone Cold put the fake gun to Vince McMahon's head, and it said bang. The flag came out that said bang, and Vince McMahon, like, pissed his pants or whatever. They did that angle in the middle of the ring. And ended up, I see a lot of highlight footage from that angle, so I guess it's a famous show. But they had us going against Tie and Tie, you know, and And I remember this was our first match. Like, we're actually having a match in WWE, WWF, you know? So I remember them telling us not to do any wrestling moves. They told us just look like you're fighting, like street fighting. Just claw the eyes, bite, pull hair, but don't do any wrestling moves. You know, that's what they told us. So when we got out to the ring, we were like, fuck that. You know what I mean? We were doing all wrestling moves. You know what I mean? This was our chance. You know what I mean? And I remember when Shaggy went up to do his leg drop from the top rope, the look on the guy's face, because there was never no spot we worked out or anything. You know, Joey just slammed the guy and then jumped up on the top rope to do this leg drop off the top. The guy's face was like, he was terrified.
Y'all went into business for yourselves, but y'all went into good.
Exactly, 100%. And I remember after Joey did his leg drop from the top rope, Joey said, "Do your moonsault." And I remember I was so scared. I was like, "No, just forget it." And he's like, "No, do it." And I was like, "No," and I didn't. And I regretted it so much, my friend. So our first night in WCW, I did my moonsault. You know what I mean?
There you go.
Yeah,
I don't like regret, but if it's got to be one type or another, that's the way it is that you got to regret what you do rather than regret what you don't.
There you go. It's an interesting subject, but you're right. Better to have failed and tried or something than to not try at all. You know what I mean? But so we just had a lot of fun in WWE. But there was a couple times when, you know, people got mad. Like one time we were doing something in the ring with DX, and Billy Gunn came at me, and I guess I didn't flinch or something. And we got backstage, and he was so fucking mad. He was screaming, "What am I, a bitch? What am I, a pussy?" You know. And you know, I'm like, just because I didn't flinch, he's like, "I'm the wrestler, you're the fucking rapper, you should have flinched." And I'm like, man, I was jaw-jacking like everybody else before the match. You know what I mean? Like, if he would have told me prior that he was giving, we could have worked something funny out, you know what I mean, or something, I would have done anything. I'm not trying to be there to look tough, but like, it just was, I guess, we just had a lot of heat in WWF. You know, we were there out of the blue. We didn't get there because we were great wrestlers, you know what I mean? But we were there, and people just didn't understand, didn't like it sometimes. But when we got to WCW, it was totally different. You know what I mean? In WCW, it felt more welcoming. They let us write our own stuff. Nobody was really being anal about what they wanted from us. They kept saying, "What do you guys want to do?" You know? And it was just funner. And plus, we got along with Vampiro super, super good, like right from the first day. And we're still friends. And I'm still working with him. So, like, we met Vamp there.
He's a real cool cat. I don't know him very well at all. I have a very cursory personal knowledge, you know what I mean? Like, personally acquainted, not very much. But just I've always loved Vampiro, man. Conan, too. Both of those guys, you know, between the wrestling, between just being, you know, living in Mexico and being on telenovelas and everything else, both those guys are just geniuses to me.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and having a friend that was one, like, you know, a respected wrestler there made a big difference for us because he was able to, I guess, vouch for us or something. You know what I mean? Because we didn't have that kind of heat in WCW. You know, we had fun, and we were doing house shows with them and everything, man. If we weren't on tour, we were doing WCW. You know what I mean? We were anywhere they were. We'd take our tour bus to wherever their tour was and follow along with the tour, you know, because we just loved doing it. We just had fun doing it in WCW, you know what I mean? And WWE was different because, you know, we had like sort of like an arrangement where they were supposed to air our commercial on Raw because we were getting all sort of exposure, but a lot of people thought we were just like a wrestling angle. They didn't know we actually had music in stores. You get what I mean? And we weren't really making any money being in WWE, so the arrangement we had with Vince Russo was that they would air our commercial, you know? And then we were like, if you air our commercial on Raw one time, that's got to be worth a lot of money, you know what I mean? So if you could do that can be our payment and we're good, you know? And he was like, okay, they agreed. We're going to air it next week, you know? And then he'd say next week again, next week is going to air for sure, you know? So after like the fourth or fifth week in a row of him putting us off, they did a live Raw and he kept saying it's going to air tonight. And we showed up for the taping the next day and our manager was like, they didn't air it, man. He's like, I think you guys should walk out now, you know? It's starting to get ridiculous. So we ended up leaving. That's how we left WWF. We ended up walking out right at the arena for the next show. You know, we just were like, well, plus it was becoming a job, you know, like after a couple months, we felt like we did it, you know, and we had heat there and they weren't in the commercial and it was, our manager was telling us to leave. And so that's how we ended up leaving WWF.
Were you guys on more of a handshake than a contract then?
Oh, yeah, we never had a contract, you know. It was just like, I think they were paying us like $1,000 each or something every time we went there. But, you know, when you're touring like on the West Coast and you're flying out all the way to go to Philly or go somewhere on the East Coast, you know, 5-hour flight there, and then you're only on the TV for, you know, 2 minutes or whatever, and then you're flying all the way back. It just became work. You know what I'm saying? Because we're also touring all week, you know what I mean, doing our thing. And so after we couldn't get it, because we felt like we're getting exposure, but nobody knows we actually have music in the stores, was the way we felt at the time, you know? We thought they think we're just an angle, like we're not an actual rap group. So that commercial would have really meant a lot to us if they would have spun it as we agreed, you know. We felt like we would have got a lot more out of it. So we ended up leaving. But when we went to WCW, they were paying us more. I think they're paying us twice what we got in WWE, but it was just way more fun. Like they'd say, who's coming in? And we would list 4 guys, us and 4 of our friends, and they just would fly us all in. They wouldn't ask any questions like, why do you need 4 guys? Who are these guys? You know what I mean? So we were flying all our friends in and everything. We were just taking advantage of. They didn't ask. They just said, okay. You know what I mean?
Wow. Now y'all isn't just now you guys are living that entourage life.
In WCW, when we got there, they had an RV for us. And, you know, you're at an arena. There's 1,000 dressing rooms back there, but they had like a camper for us and everything. Probably the first 3 shows we did, then the camper just disappeared. But we always had our tour bus meet us, you know what I mean? So we even shot vignettes and stuff with using our bus, like let other wrestlers and stuff use it for like the vignettes and stuff. It was great, man. We had so much fucking fun there, wrestling 3 Count and wrestling Lenny and Lodi and the house shows when there was no time limit, you know, and there was no TV, and just having fun. Those house shows, I'll never forget it, man. We were on the house show the first night Bret Hart ever wrestled Hulk Hogan. You know, it was just a house show. They were like kind of having the match just to see how it went, you know. And we were on that show, and it meant everything to us. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I remember after our match, we were walking in the dressing room, and Arn Anderson grabbed my arm and pulled me aside. I thought he was going to say something, how I fucked up or I did something wrong. And he was like, you know, man, that was actually good. That was a good match. And that was like all the reward I needed. You know what I mean? It was so cool to hear Arn Anderson tell us that. You know what I mean? I'll never forget that shit, man.
That's tremendous. So for the people who don't know, tell everybody that's listening, we talked about WCW, we talked about WWE before it. You guys also made sporadic appearances with ECW. So also in
actually before, you know what, brother? Before we did our WWE debut, we actually did that one pay-per-view with ECW.
Right. Okay. Right. Because I was going to ask, you know, and it could be different for both. That could have been different from when you came back. You know, things change. But what I was going to ask you is, now that it's a generation later, right, a couple of decades, now that it doesn't matter, but it's never mattered more. Now that we could talk about it and talk turkey and talk open and inside baseball, what I'm wondering is, when you guys appear with us, are you guys appearing with us not so much as a tryout, but more like developmental or whatever? But that first time, for example, are you appearing in ECW the same way, for example, Al Snow, Droz, Brackus appeared in ECW where it was kind of through WWF, or were you appearing with ECW more on an independent freelance basis?
Man, this is exactly how we ended up in ECW, because that was actually probably maybe just 2 months before we debuted with WWE. I became good friends with Rob Van Dam here in Detroit, in Michigan, when he was coming up, we were coming up, and we were the only young guys in the dressing, you know? So when Rob started with ECW, I remember him sending me VHS tapes. And here I'm looking at the VHS tapes, and I'm seeing Sandman. I'm seeing all of this for the first time, the way the camera's done, like Natural Born Killers, how it's all sideways, you know what I mean? And when the promos are done like cutting edge style, like alternative, and they have like an Alice in Chains song with a Sabu highlight reel to the Alice in Chains song, you know, and it was real music, and the wrestlers were swearing. What happened in Philly, what happened in ECW changed pro wrestling forever, all the way to WWE and beyond. And we were hip to it, brother. We were driving when Rob started sending me tapes from ECW. Me and my brother and my manager and my friend Shaggy, we started driving down there all the time. One time we drove down there, and ICP wasn't where we're at. This is like 95, 96. Right? ICP was big in the Midwest, huge in Michigan, but we hadn't popped yet nationwide. And I remember I drove up Park Avenue all the way to Philly full of my friends, and in the morning there was an ashtray through the back window of my Park Avenue when I went to the fucking Holiday Inn where all the wrestlers used to stay right there in Philly. And I remember asking Rob and Pee Wee and everybody, how did my back window break? And they were like, New Jack threw a big glass ashtray out of the window, and it just happened to land in my back window. He threw an ashtray out of the window at the hotel, way up in one of the floors, and it smashed my back window. Like, we were coming to ECW then, but in 98 or 99, it was ECW's second ever pay-per-view from Florida. And I went in through Sabu and Rob Van Dam, who were my buddies, and I said, ask him if we can make an appearance, because this is when our album was first really selling at this point. We had gone nationwide. I think it was 1999. And we appeared at their second pay-per-view ever, and we got to sit there and hear Paulie conduct a meeting before the show, and we got to sit among them all. And during the spot, which was me and Shaggy in the ring getting everybody hyped up, getting everybody chanting ECW, and then Rob Van Dam and Sabu hit the ring and beat our ass. Rob Van Dam did a back spinning heel kick, and he popped my eardrum. And my ear totally went deaf. He popped a hole in my eardrum. And here's the thing. Our tour was scheduled to begin the very next day, and I could not hear out of my ear at all. And so I was terrified. I remember at that pay-per-view in Florida, the second ECW pay-per-view, I was walking around, pulling on my ear, trying to get my hearing back after Rob kicked me in the ear and popped my ear. And I was kind of worried about Sabu because I thought Sabu would be rough. And Sabu was the one that took care of us. You know, he had me in a camel clutch, and Rob was about to drop kick the chair in my face. And Sabu took care of me. He said, tuck your head down now. And he was the one I thought I had heat with. But I ended up being, obviously, like you said, super cool with Sabu, you know. So, but that first show, to make a long story short, they ended up putting a tiny patch over the hole in my ear the next morning. So I was able to get my hearing right back when I left the hearing doctor. You know, they put a patch over the hole in my eardrum, and I was able to hear again, and then it naturally healed. But that first event was a trip, man. In seeing Paulie's passion in that meeting and seeing the passion among all the boys on that show, I'm so glad I got to witness that historical movement that was happening among these people, among this small group of ninjas, you included, 1,000%. You guys changed all the wrestling, bro, worldwide. You know, because what was happening among this group of individuals at ECW, what was happening creatively, the energy wave you guys were on, ended up changing all of wrestling, all of WWE. They totally adapted the entire concept of ECW with the Attitude Movement. And And I'm glad I got to see it, but I was there as a fan and as a performer that one time in ECW. And later, when we were in WCW years later, we were going back to ECW. We were on our way back to ECW. We were leaving WCW. We had Paulie on the phone, and Raven was announcing a mystery tag team, and it was supposed to be us on a pay-per-view, and we ended up returning to WCW. And so we were about to go back at one point to ECW, but I'm just so glad to have been there and been in the ECW arena and been in that venue down in Florida and saw that meeting prior to the pay-per-view and witnessed it and witnessed the passion. And I was at the ECW arena and I saw these shows that were changing the world when they were changing the world. And it's such a blessing to have witnessed that, brother. And some things might be in the past, but they remain forever, and that's just a fact, man. You know what I mean?
Well, you picked up the ball and ran with it, because then what you did is you changed music, live music, festival music, promotions, live event, you turned it on its ear, because now where there's, you've got Coachella and you've got Lollapalooza and you've got Lilith Fair, but now with ICP, it's not just that there's all these different planets that are in alignment in the same place at the same time. With you guys are the whole universe. Like ICP, Juggalos, you do the gathering, and it's all you and all of your cohorts, colleagues, the people that are aligned and affiliated with you guys, and you guys go out in these gatherings of the Juggalos, and you guys, it's all about the Juggalos, and it's all about kind of the IC universe. So I find that kind of mesmerizing. Can you talk about, from beginning to now, can you take us through what it's been like not having to worry about getting booked, a gig, nothing, just you guys being your own cottage industry and putting on this gathering as often as you do? Tell everybody about, in case they don't know what I've been to one, and like I said before, I don't even remember earlier on if I said this in the green room with you before we started recording or if we said it after, but like I've been to a gathering, I've worked a gathering, appeared, and honestly, I've never seen anything like the gathering, and I've been to one. Tell everybody who's not familiar, tell them about the gathering.
Well, I'll tell you exactly what the gathering is, in a way that I know you'll understand, because you can absolutely relate. The gathering, our fan base, which calls themselves Juggalos, by the way, we never named them that. This was no plan. This was not something in our blueprints. This was not something we went for. This is something that happened at a certain time in the world, and at the end of the day, it's an enormous blessing. And how I'm going to tell you so that you relate is, it's no different than what happened in ECW. It's no different. The product that you guys were putting out at that time in the world was so on point in what needed to happen that it drove the fans ecstatic in a way that made them part of the phenomenon. Like, ECW would never have been as cool as it was if they weren't as unbelievably hype as they were, correct?
Well, you couldn't keep people away. It's literally, it wasn't like you were trying to get people to pay to be there and buy a ticket. You would have to pay people to not come to the show. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying.
But that's the same way the gathering is. Like, for a lot of people, dude, and I know you realize it, but I'll say it out loud. The gathering, for a lot of people, they're taking one annual vacation with their spouse, with their family. Their annual vacation is the gathering.
No doubt. But it's a blessing. It's not anything we can be credited for. It's something that happened, and it's easily half, if not more, of the story. Because all of the highlights that happened in ECW, as brilliant as the writing, as brilliant as the fucking performers were, as brilliant as the presentation was, the energy from the fans are what made it the spectacle it was in double the energy in excitement. I never even heard of you fucked up chant until I went to ECW Arena. You know what I mean? These are as common as anything now, but this is a time when all of this was unheard of. And it's no different in underground hip-hop with our fan base. It's almost identical, because if you take away Juggalo and the whole gathering of the Juggalos, which is our fan festival that we host once a year, but it's the people that attend and what they do and the way they behave and the way they are so incredibly creative and energetic of what they love, that makes the entire show. If you take that away, so much of our magic goes with it. Like it's almost like they're writing our legacy with us, you know? Because if you take away the Juggalos from ICP, if you take away all the whoop whoop and the Fago and the Juggalos and the madness of the gathering, there's not a lot there but a couple rapping clowns. You know what I mean? It's them that solidifies us, that makes us matter, you know? And the ECW product is so similar because it was a changing of the times. It was a changing when the bad guys people wanted to stop seeing Tugboat and stop seeing lame shit and being treated like a little kid, and wanted their wrestling to be the age they were and the storylines they were on, and how, like, you know, that's not my baby, and this shit, you know, the crazy adult storylines were so exciting to see, because that's where a lot of people were at in life too, and it was just a great time. And magic, that's how magic works. It don't work. It's like putting two different color liquids together you shouldn't in chemistry class, you know, because it makes that boom. It took the product to be solid and the people of the times and the area and everything ECW was that made that magic pop, that brought those two chemicals together. And it's very, very similar to what happened with us. It's an enormous blessing. It's an enormous, something you couldn't plan, something you could never put in your blueprints. It just happened on its own. And to sit here 20 years later and act like it was something that we purposely did or designed would be criminal, because it's just as magical now as it was then, and to keep continuing to happen to us. And they're so energetic and responsive to our product that it makes it easier to create. You know, it makes it easier and you're more inspired to provide the product they want. Like, I'm sure Paulie had a much easier time writing the next day's TV when he hears all them chants coming out of that building. You know what I mean? All that receptive energy makes your job way easier to entertain when you're being adored like that. You know what I mean?
Violent J, I got to be real honest with you. Like, it is what it is, and it ain't what it ain't. But I eat clown food, and I bleed clown paint. You know what I mean? Almost from day zero. You guys sent me a care package back in the day in '97. Great Milenko stuff. CDs, sealed, T-shirts, everything, and you guys didn't know me from Adam, except I guess maybe from seeing me on ECW TV for whatever. But I mean, you guys have always treated me great. I was positively, for example, flabbergasted when I was not only invited to appear at the gathering, but when I was involved in the main event with you guys in your retirement match, Lose and Leave Town, all the Jeopardy, all the stipulations, last match like 2:30 in the morning. And I was absolutely in a great way, like family flabbergasted. A special place in my heart, you guys in the gathering talked about the Sabu book and me being the narrator. The physical exact copy of the book that I'm going to be reading from when I record is the book that Sabu gave me at the gathering I appeared. So you guys are always tell people, Jay, whether it's talking about the summer of 2023, talking about the second half of 2023, tell people what you guys have going on right now and coming up, and then let them know how they can find out more about you and stay in touch with you.
Man, we have a couple festival dates. This year we're not touring as ICP. We have a couple festival dates. We're doing, I believe, a festival called Riot Fest in Chicago, and another festival called Blue Ridge in Virginia this year. And then we're doing our annual events, of course, which are the Gathering, which are the Hallowicked Clown Show. This year we have the 30th anniversary. It's our 30th anniversary Hallowicked Clown Show in Detroit. We play every Halloween in Detroit. We have for the past 30 years. So we're doing that this year. And then we have like the Big Ballers Christmas party, which is in Manhattan on the boat, which goes around the Statue of Liberty and all that. And we have, our regular annual events.
By the way, whatever you guys do in Manhattan, whenever you guys are in town, please let's grab a slice, let's grab a drink, whatever y'all are into. That show, please let me know about it in advance. Whatever it is, I'll pay twice as much.
Bro, that's a guarantee, though. That goes without saying. You're the first person I'm hitting if I'm coming out there. You already know that. That's all day. So, yeah, and I'm also starting with NWA, with Billy Corgan's NWA. And he's Vampiro's over there managing La Rebellion, which is NWA Tag Team Champions right now. And I'm coming in to manage the Brothers of Funstruction. And if you go to my Instagram, which is at Violent J, you'll see the new video and ring music I just made for the tag team, the Brothers of Funstruction, which are two clowns. And they are the tag team champions in our promotion, which has been around for 20 years, which is Juggalo Championship Wrestling, which you appeared at, Joel, and will appear again in the near future. And, brother, I'm an immense size fan of you. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, bro. You intimidated me every time you spoke on the mic. I didn't know what to think, and I was in the business, my friend. I was already in the business, but I was everything you did sold me 100%, bro. I bought it all. I bought everything you said and did. I thought you were for real serious.
I wanted to learn from the greats, but be nothing like them. I wanted to emulate, but not imitate. And when I was on the mic, it was, you didn't know whether you were supposed to urinate, defecate, or ejaculate. You know what I mean? Like that was, you know what I mean? That was it. That was, I don't know.
Bro, you had the fucking crowd in a hysterical panic. Every time you got on the mic, I didn't know if we were going to riot or what we were going to do in the crowd. But I knew emotions were about to reach a fever pitch every time you grabbed the mic, brother.
Well, thank you, man.
I love it, man.
I love you, bro, and I love you guys. I love the fam. Tell Shaggy I say hey. Tell Rude Boy I say hey. Tell everybody I say hey in the crew. Dude, I mean, I think it's it's 26 years now. It's over a quarter of a century since before I ever seen you stand in the same room with me, since before I ever met you in person. It's been 26 years that I've been down with the clown all the way downtown, like to Chinatown, with the chunky dumplings and everything. You know what I mean? Like,
hell yeah.
You're family to me. I thank you so much for bringing me into the gathering a few years ago. I can't wait to see you again. I thank you so much for doing the show. Hit everybody with the social media and the website.
Yep, the website is, our social media on Instagram is therealicp.com, and my social media is at violentj.com. And, I'm on Instagram, and we're on Twitter. We're on everything, man. We're not hard to find, you know what I mean? So that's the only reason we're not out here committing crimes, because we're too easy to locate.
People would have better time trying to avoid you than find you, and why would they want to? You know what I mean? Never. No, everybody get acclimated, govern yourself accordingly, and if you're not already a juggalo, be on it. You know what I mean? ICP, Insane Clown Posse, Violent J, Shaggy 2 Dope. Get with the program. You 25 years late to the party, but the party don't end, and it never stops. Dude, thank you so much for being with us. I so love you, and I so appreciate it.
Thank you, my man, Joel. You know you're my man, and I love you, and we'll be in touch real soon, man. We talk all the time, and that ain't going to stop, my man.
All day, twice on Sunday, and we'll have more 69-minute eargasm.
Taking it deeper, and that's how it better be. I never let the comparison get to me. I just remember the promises meant for me. I know the enemy, and that he's...
Well. History is kept best when it is kept to a maximum. If we do not learn from history, we might repeat the bad things. If we don't know the good things, we cannot make them better. My guest right now You hear him on the Eargasm each and every week. He is the librarian of record. He is the archivist of legend. He is the man with all of history's mysteries in our great sport of kings, professional wrestling. He is the one and the only, the inimitable Mr. John Pantosi.
Oh, thank you, Joel. Okay, let's see what happened on this date way back when. 1944 in Houston, Texas. Lou Thez defeats Ernie Dusick and wins the Texas Heavyweight Championship. 1949 in Toledo, Ohio. Dave Levin defeated George Bolus for the Jack Pfeffer promoted World Heavyweight Championship. 1951 in Portland, Oregon, Frenchie Roy defeats Dale Haddock, and he wins the Pacific Coast Junior. 1960 in Toronto, Elio DePaulo and Whipper Billy Watson defeat the Gallagher brothers, Doc and Mike, and they win the NWA Canadian Open Tag Team Championship. 1962 in Newark, a very controversial match. Bobo Brazil defeats Buddy Rogers and supposedly wins the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. However, Rogers claimed he injured his groin during the match. The match was stopped by the referee, and because Rogers could not continue, he declared Brazil the winner. However, Bobo did not accept the victory. 2 weeks later, a doctor examined Buddy's groin and said he was just fine, but the results stood, and Bobo was the new NWA champ. Rogers would win the title back on October 30th in Toledo, Ohio. Today, however, this title change is not recognized anywhere by the NWA. All right, 1970 in Macon, Georgia, Bill Dromo and Alberto Torres defeat Buddy Colt and Carl von Stroheim for the NWA Macon, Georgia tag team titles. A year later, 1971, in Mobile, Alabama, Rip Tyler defeats Ken Lucas in the finals of a 17-man tag team match, and he wins the vacant City of Mobile heavyweight title. Very interesting. 1978, in Kagoshima, Japan, Mil Mascaras defeats the Destroyer, and he wins the AJPW PWF U.S. heavyweight title. Battle of the masked wrestlers there. Same year in Knoxville, Tennessee, the Mongolian Stomper wins the NWA Southeastern heavyweight title by defeating Robert Fuller. 1982 in Shreveport, Louisiana, Mike Sharp. Iron Mike Sharp defeated Killer Khan, and he wins the Mid-South Louisiana heavyweight title. 1984 in Portland, Oregon, Tom Pritchard and Brett Sawyer win the NWA Pacific Northwest Tag Team titles by defeating Mr. Ebony, who was Tom Jones, and Mike Miller. 1988 in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Leo Burke defeats Rip Rogers for the Grand Prix Wrestling International Heavyweight title. Now we go to Monterrey, Mexico in 1991. Cien Caras defeated Conan for the CMLL World Heavyweight title. 1993, WCW Clash of Champions, Daytona Beach, Florida. Arn Anderson and Paul Roma defeat Steve Austin and Lord Steven Regal and win the WCW NWA Tag Team Championships. The same show, Ricky Steamboat pins WCW TV champ Paul Orndorff to win the title. But that was not why that show was remembered. That's the show where Fred Ottman came out as the Shockmaster, tripped, and lost his Stormtrooper helmet, a moment that will live in infamy. Okay, 1994, at the Best in the World 94 Tournament Finals, Super Vader defeats UWF Heavyweight Champ Nobuhiko Takada to win the title. And finally, in 2013, at SummerSlam in Los Angeles, California, Daniel Bryan defeats John Cena. He wins the WWE title, but just for a few minutes. Randy Orton comes in, cashes his Money in the Bank briefcase, and defeats Daniel to win the WWE title. And that's this day in history.
And that's an interesting one, Mr. Pantozzi, because somehow you found a way to include, all on the same day in history, the Shockmaster, Shock Trooper, Stormtrooper helmet, and Buddy Rogers with a groin injury, and someone losing their City of Mobile championship. I'll tell you, I never did lose the City of Mobile championship due to a groin injury, but there was one night that I took from New Jack a vacuum cleaner to the nuts. I think it was somewhere in the Mid-Atlantic, and I did have to take the night off, if you know what I mean. John, rest of the night off for you. Well deserved. Thank you so much for the history lesson, the primer, and of course the reminder. We will carry it with us everywhere we go, and until we hear from you again next week.
Thank you, Joel.
Got it. We'll have more 69-minute eargasm after this.